In science, it's the innovators who ask bolder questions to solve bigger challenges. That's the mission of innovative teams like yours and ours. In support of your goals, the Fisher Scientific team keeps science moving forward by offering over 2 million products globally, including lab supplies, instruments and equipment, safety products, chemicals, and life science reagents.
Good morning and welcome everyone to today's forum on managing PPE supply chain to support your laboratory, brought to you by our friends at Fisher Scientific, MassBio Edge, the New England Edge, and MassBio. As you all know, at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the nation experienced a severe shortage of personal protective equipment, or PPE. It threatened the safety of our healthcare workers, frontline workers, in treating the massive influx of COVID-19 patients. It was critical that the life sciences come together to help support getting PPE back out to our frontline workers and our healthcare workers. In Massachusetts, we formed the Life Sciences Emergency Supply Hub, which coordinated efforts among the MassBio community and life sciences companies like yours to pool together our resources and get those out to the front lines. I commend this industry. We were thanked graciously by the government here in Massachusetts for the work that we had done to support the frontline workers. The state ultimately has set up its own portal for those seeking to donate supplies, really helped offset the PPE shortage, and it enabled healthcare and life science operations to continue. But there have been some supply chain issues that have popped up with PPE. And now, this webinar is really going to be focused on what does the current global supply chain look like for PPE? What are some of the issues with manufacturing? And we have our friends from Thermo Fisher here today to talk to us about what they're doing to help our member companies and their customers address these issues to ensure that all of us stay safe moving forward. So today I want to really introduce you to some of our speakers. Today we're joined by Kristen Roosevelt, Industry Director with Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Tony Spearing, Senior Director of Commercial Operations for North America with Thermo Fisher. Kristen, thank you for joining us today. One quick thing I wanted to talk about was we have been working diligently over the past year on a program and a contract that's really going to help move the needle in the future for our members. You want to share a little bit about that, tease that out to our members that are listening today?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jason. The Thermo Fisher Scientific team is certainly very excited about the renewed partnership with MassBio. We do have new incentives to support the membership focused on safety suppliers and supplier diversity. Additional details will be rolled out over the next few weeks to the membership. Just want to say thank you to MassBio for the continued collaboration, and we're excited for what 2021 will bring. Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, we are incredibly excited. And as Kristen had mentioned, more to come over the next few weeks about this new contract, and we'll have some more information about how you can reach out to your friends at Fisher, friends at MassBio, and take advantage of it. But I want to kick into today's content and introduce Tony Spearing. Tony.
Thanks, Jason. And good morning to everyone, and thank you for taking the time to spend with us this morning. I just want to take you all through a viewpoint of how we believe we are assisting and working with our customers in managing the PPE supply chain in order to make sure that your needs are supported. So anyone that knows me, I always like to start off with a quotation. And on the next slide, when we look at it, I was going through the other day and my usual browsing through the net and that. And this one came up from Gary Zukov, who's a inspirational and motivational speaker here in the US. And it really resonated with me based on a number of things. But he said, changing the world begins with a very personal process of changing yourself. The only place you can begin is where you are, and the only time you can begin is always now. So when we look at the last year together, that resonates to me because we, as both customers and Thermo Fisher, really needed to change the way we looked at things and how we did things going into April, May of last year when COVID-19 really hit us. And then this year, we once again have to change again as to how we look at things from the perspective of looking at not only supporting COVID-19 or what I term, managing our base business or your base business and supporting that. So today I want to run through 4 different sections. A quick 30 seconds on who I am. I think it's very important to go back to the beginning and look at how we as an organization responded to COVID-19 and the action steps that we took last year, which are still in place today in order to effectively support you. From there, I'd like to talk about current state and then move in to how we look at things in order to make sure we're extremely granular with a safety heat map in order to be able to dial in to the areas where we know our customers are having problems and resolve them in a number of different ways. And then last but not least, I'd like to talk about navigating the current environment together and how we work as a collective team together when we engage in order to make sure that we support your COVID-19 requirements, but in addition to that, we support you in your daily business as well. So if we move into the next slide, looking at quickly who I am, Tony Spearing. I have been in industrial distribution my entire career, focused on safety for the last 15. And within Fisher Scientific, I have the privilege of leading a multidisciplined team of safety specialists, controlled environment specialists. I have a safety business development team and also our first responder specialists. So let's go back to the beginning, right, in the next slide, right? And let's talk about what we did as we moved in to April, May of last year. Well, we saw the spikes coming. It was all on the news. We knew we needed to be ready. So the first thing we did was we immediately locked down high demand PPE items to make sure there wasn't a run on them that impacted our current account base. We developed prioritization processes to serve existing customers based on their historical demand, but also based on the hierarchy of needs depending on what they actually did. We made sure that we supported our Thermo Fisher sites so they could remain operational and make all those wonderful things that support each of you on this call today. And then we launched a group of teams together in order to make sure that A, we secured large buys for PPE manufacturers as they were going into an allocation process. And we also launched a task force to focus on PPE to make sure initially we're air freighting product through to support immediate needs, but looking longer term as to how we really drilled down to make sure that where there was a gap, we were able to bridge that gap. To give you an idea of how that looked in North America and Europe, from a North American standpoint, the lockdown consisted of 112 categories, right, that we knew that we needed to make sure we locked down. That was 94% of our 30-day back order dollars. We covered those with work streams to make sure that we're effectively navigating those back orders to get the product out to the customers as and when they needed them. And just to give you an idea, 75 or 67% of the 112 categories are still part of our current work stream that we focus day in and day out to make sure that we're on top of global trends, we're on top of the needs of our customers, so we can make sure that we're very quick in pivoting and very quick in providing solutions that drive your businesses forward. We did similar in Europe, not going to go through those ones, but the message there was we didn't look at it from a North America perspective. We looked at it from a global focus to support our customers, because a lot of you not only have locations here in the US, but you also have EU affiliates. And we wanted to make sure that we looked at it from a holistic approach. If we look at where we are today in the next slide, what I think is important to share is 2 things. First of all, there are overarching challenges in the market, right? When you look at social distancing, it is absolutely impacting labor and production capacity, causing PPE shortages. Perfect example of that is sterile nitrile gloves, right? You've got a lot of those are made in Malaysia. Malaysia has a lockdown in force, which is actually going to be going through August now, where someone can't drive, I think it is more than 10 kilometers from their house. Well, if you work 15 or 20, you've got a little bit of a problem getting to work, and that means that the manufacturer has a problem getting their products out. Add to that, when you look at a nitrile sterile glove, a nitrile sterile glove is packaged literally by people standing next to each other, right? And putting them in those packs for everyone to use. Well, now you've got a 6 feet requirement. You can't have everyone next to each other, and people are, having to space out. So all those social distancing issues are impacting the ability to produce. Add to that raw material cost increases, right, due to the shortage. Perfect of that is nitrile. As you well know, nitrile raw material is really constrained right now, and costs are going through the roof, right? So it's important that as we look at that from a overarching market perspective, we, as Fisher Scientific, understand what we're going to do to mitigate that as much as we can, so we can ensure that all of you are, being able to do the business that you need to do with the products that you need to do them. Air freight and sea freight capacity are very constrained right now, even more so with Chinese New Year. But there's a lot of containers coming this direction and less containers going back over to that part of the world where manufacturing takes place, which is really constraining sea freight capacity, air freight capacity, and unfortunately also driving additional costs up. When we look at global customer trends, we're seeing a number of different things, right? We're seeing customers valuing supply and availability despite pricing stability. That's not to say they're accepting it immediately, right? But they're working to understand with people like ourselves how we make sure that we have security of supply during this price instability timeframe. One of the challenges that we're having to navigate is we're seeing that customers are requesting more on-hand inventory in their facilities, some 3 to 6 months. That is a very difficult one for us to navigate, especially seeing as your traditional manufacturers, Ansell, Kimberly-Clark, to name but a few, are on a monthly allocation with their distributor network, a monthly historical allocation with their distributor network. But what that's doing is we're seeing a lot of our interactions with our customers leading to a tremendous increase in collaboration to develop support for demand, which is really challenged. And you hear that my team always use that terminology, validate and conserve. It is imperative in today's market that we have alternatives out there so that we collectively can bob and weave a little bit, as I would call it, depending on supply with those manufacturers. But it is also more important that we work together to understand how we conserve. Perfect example is a pharmaceutical company which my team worked with during the course of November, December. They were using a nitrile, exam grade glove across the majority of their facility. When we did the analysis, we found that 60% of the area where they were using that nitrile exam grade glove did not have direct impact to their product. So in their words as a customer, it wasn't in a critical application. So what we were able to do for the specific customer, as they navigated the shortage of nitrile exam gloves out there, they were able to move through our joint collaboration, move the non-critical usage to critical usage, and we provided them alternative solutions for that non-critical area, which freed up that inventory. A very big win for this particular pharma company, because it shored up their critical applications. They didn't have to worry about not having product to get there, or not having safety product, nitrile exam grade gloves in this instance, to get the rephrase. They did not have to worry about the nitrile exam grade product being available for their critical applications, because they knew we'd taken care of the non-critical with other solutions. And then the last piece, which I think was really key, is we work day in and day out with our customers from a virtual versus a field perspective in a lot of cases. A lot of customers do not want us on site. So we've had to figure out how we drive that value as a safety and controlled environment organization virtually, how we do those surveys, how we do those audits in order to be able to support or effectively support your needs as a customer. Moving into the next slide though, knowing what I've just shared here, what is important from my team's perspective is to get extremely granular in understanding what the demand and what the supply looks like from a prior month to a current month perspective. So we analyze this on a weekly basis. We update it as a team, and we look at where our focus points need to be internally and where our focus points need to be with you, our customer. So if we take, for instance, nitrile thin-walled exam gloves, each of you, I'm sure, have struggled over the course of the last 6 months to get the needed supply. The challenge there has been that our manufacturing partners have been on historical allocation. Well, that's great for the manufacturing partner, who we have tremendous respect and partner with very strongly. But if your businesses are ramping up, there's a gap there which we're not able to fill, or they're not able to fill by extension, right, based on that allocation. We've worked diligently over the last 6 months to figure out how we take our business, how we utilize our resources in order to make sure that we're able to fill those gaps. Perfect example would be if you're buying from a manufacturer and you need 1,000 cases a month of these nitrile exam grade gloves, but now you're in a position where you have to supply additional COVID-19 needs, and now you're ramping up new business, whether it be COVID related or base business related, within your facilities. That 1,000 cases might go to 2,000 cases. Well, I'm proud to say that as of today, Fisher Scientific is able to manage that gap with all the efforts that we have put in place with a non-traditional branded solution, right? Something which I certainly hope that you will engage us on, because we've taken a tremendous amount of effort to get there. And now we're in a position where we know we have consistent month-over-month supply to support those gaps. That is a major win on this heat map in taking us from red in December to green in January and February. When we look at 3 down, the nitrile wall non-sterile controlled environment gloves and the sterile controlled environment gloves on the next line, they're absolutely a red right now. Manufacturing capacity is constrained. It is a challenge. But my team are actively working with every customer that engages us in order to understand what type of solutions we can put in place to stretch that supply out, or look at non-critical applications where we can move these 2 product lines solely to the critical applications and work on other solutions. I will be sharing with you that both of those, where I look at a gap fill scenario, will be moving to yellow and green in the coming 2 months. Just don't have the product yet, but we absolutely have a solution which will be up and ready to go in that March, April timeframe on that non-sterile controlled environment gloves and thin wall nitrile sterile controlled environment gloves. It'll be in a reduced capacity, but for those that engage with us, we will be able to provide additional relief there. As I continue to go down, single-use general purpose coveralls moving very quickly from a red to a yellow. Ansell has communicated very clearly, Kimberly-Clark has communicated very clearly that their A40s are moving to excess of what their demand is, and DuPont is doing the same on their Tyvek. Those will be coming through probably in that April timeframe from what I am seeing currently today. Continuing to move down here to a couple of other areas, right? You've got your multi-purpose controlled environment lab coats, right? Your general purpose gowns very good inventory right now. Again, we've been able to supplement that with our own solutions and our own team. Likewise with general purpose lab coats, we've been able to do the same. And then as we go further down, I think an important one for me to share with you is based on single-use air purifying respirators. If you look at that particular piece of the market, as you went into that June, July, August, September timeframe, the branded manufacturers like 3M had to move all their capacity to the first responders within that healthcare market, right? That has become, a little less of an issue. However, it will still be a primary issue from what I believe from, the 3Ms, the Moldexes, and that type of thing for the foreseeable future. As Fisher Scientific, we again looked at that gap. We again analyzed our customers, engaged with those that are currently engaged with us, and we would obviously look for others, and we'll be seeking further engagement to solve that challenge in that area. And I can proudly say going into March and April, we will have enough N95 type product to have excess inventory to be able to take on more support within the customer base on that particular category. That is a huge one for us based on the fact that N95s is one of those categories which is severely constrained from a general market perspective, but we're now moving it to green last month with our existing customer base, and we're going to be moving it to green this month and moving forward as we ramp up with our solutions, which will be month-over-month supply. To give you an idea, we have a commitment out there with one manufacturer where during the month of March, April, we'll be taking in 1 million masks. And with another manufacturer, we have committed to 250,000 a month in addition to what we get today, right? That didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of negotiation, a lot of work, but that directly impacts you and your workers in order to be able to effectively navigate COVID-19 and also the business that you do day in and day out. Proud to say, Kristen, as we looked at this, there's a lot more green on here than what there was in December, right, from an activity perspective. And I would expect that as we continue to move through the months, we'll see more green coming on this as our teams continue to engage with both our primary manufacturers and solutions around those primary manufacturers to fill the necessary gaps. So all that information is great, but what do we actually do with it? And I think the next slide really tells the story of how my team works with our customers in order to ensure that everything we do touches touch points that matter to you. We use the statement within my organization that your people and the work that they do are your biggest investments. Aligning all safety activity to prepare, prevent, protect, and respond in any setting is our responsibility to work with in a collaboration with yourself. In short, we ensure that collectively together, we protect what matters most. When I look at it from a lab environment perspective, when I look at it from a conserve and validate perspective, in my mind, it hits you in 3 ways. The people that work in your facilities to ensure that they're protected from COVID-19 and have the PPE needed to support their day-to-day jobs. From a facilities perspective, to ensure that we are equipping the facility with the needed parts and pieces and solutions to make sure that your people, again, are protected. And lastly, from an environmental perspective, a great one there, which we came out with probably about 2 months ago now, and we did a soft launch in the academic side, was a 3-ply mask recycling project. Think about all the additional 3-ply masks that are out there right now because of COVID-19. And what do you do when you finish using them? Well, we put a recycling program together, for 3-ply masks that we're looking at expanding across, our other areas. So when I look at how we touch you, right, from a organizational perspective, these are the 3 areas in my mind that my team should be actively engaged, if you engage with us, in sorting and working through any challenges and opportunities from a safety and a controlled environment perspective. If I didn't put a shameless plug in here on the next slide, I'd be remiss, right? This is what my team does day in and day out. This call and webcast is focused around that bottom right-hand corner being the lab. But my team focuses on ensuring that there is continuity and safety across an entire facility, whether it's in facilities maintenance, warehouse, chemical storage, or in your production areas. Perfect example of that, is chemicals, right? When you receive a chemical in your warehouse, you have to make sure it's stored properly and received properly. When it comes through to the lab and you decant it, we have to make sure that the correct labels go on the decanted container. When you store it, we have to make sure that we put that chemical in a storage area which has the right sorbents or storage mechanism. Your facilities maintenance crew, as they work in the various areas, they need to understand what that chemical is and how they need to interact with it. Do they simply need an N95 or do they need higher respiratory protection? This is what my team does day in and day out in an extension to that lab piece. I have 70 safety and controlled environment specialists that focus solely on making sure you have exactly what you need within your labs and your other teams have exactly what they need around you in their areas. We have a robust portfolio that supports it, and we have a lot of services that we bring to the table in order to round out our offering. In short, I believe that we have a platform that supports both your COVID-19 needs and your day-to-day business, or as I call it, our customers' base business. And it's my responsibility as leading this team to ensure that we engage, navigate that heat map, navigate the current environment in order to ensure that your needs are taken care of both in your lab with this audience here and across your facility. So I guess in short, if I was to sum it up, and I can sum it up in one step on the next slide, it would be that our organization's focus, whether it be my safety team, whether it be Kristen and her team, whether it be our commercial organization, together we enable our customers, being all of you, to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. If you're engaged with us today, I thank you very much for your support. Please continue to challenge us as a safety team so we can drive additional solutions for you. If you're not engaged with us today, please reach out. Let's engage. We're very diligent, as I think I've shared over the last 28 minutes or so, in understanding the market, understanding our customers' needs, and then acting to support them. So with that, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much, Tony, and really thank you for being here today with us and sharing all this great information about what your organization has been doing to address these ongoing issues. I welcome everybody to please enter any of your questions into the chat box here, and we will handle those. We have Tony, obviously, and Kristen as well to help answer any of the questions. One thing I did want to ask, Tony, is that, we know that there is a significant pain point right now with the nitrile gloves, and you certainly mentioned that, you touched on that a little bit in your presentation, but can you talk to us a little bit more about, what your organization is doing really to focus in on this piece, and also what are some things that we can do to help alleviate some of these issues, and how do we work with your team to do that?
Yeah, so I look at it in two ways. It's a great question, Jason. And the first way is looking at it from supply, and the second way is looking at it from conserve and validate. So if I tackle the supply piece first, as I shared a little bit earlier when we looked at the heat map, we knew there was a challenge there. We knew that the volume required across the world had increased so much that it was really constraining supply. So with the size of our organization, we took the time to really embed ourselves with the world's largest manufacturers and start talking to them about how we can work with them to bridge that gap from our customers' needs to what was on allocation from the branded manufacturers. And in some customers, that is a very small gap because they have historical allocation. But with others that are really ramping up, that historical allocation is just not there. So that pain point was increased dramatically, right? So while it took us close to 6 months to really get the solution in place, product started flowing and shipping in containers in December, and it started landing in January. And as we go into February, we got more, and we're going into March, and it'll continue to ramp up. But we were able to use, supply that gap fill. So I'll use the example again, is if we're getting 1,000 cases from a branded manufacturer, and that's the allocation, that's all you can get, but you need 2,000, right? We're now in a position where you can get that extra 1,000 from a nitrile exam grade glove perspective. Likewise, if you weren't on allocation, you weren't getting any, we've now got a solution to supply you, period, right? So that's the supply piece. The conserve and validate piece is the real important one as well. So as we work through this, there's going to be areas, especially on the sterile piece, where you just can't drive that gap fill up to the level that's needed. While I mentioned that we will have some non-sterile and sterile solutions coming through on the nitrile, it's very important to conserve and validate in this area, but also to be open up to really adjusting and thinking outside the box, like that quote I just provided right in the beginning. And I'll use an example with a customer there. They were looking at a nitrile sterile glove, and we just can't get them what they need based on their ramp up. But we were able to understand the application they were using it for through my controlled environment team, and really drill down to what the needs were, and work with a supplier of ours in order to be able to pivot from nitrile sterile to neoprene sterile for this particular application. We trialed it out, we tested it, it worked. And that has now really put this customer in a position where they don't have to worry about supply chain for this particular area of their business, because neoprene was more available at that time than what nitrile is today still. So we were able to fill it with that neoprene sterile solution. Those are the two areas where my team really brings value in talking to customers, because we can understand what we can do from a supply perspective, and then we can absolutely dig in, roll our sleeves up, and help on that conserve and validate piece.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to answer that. And to the point about the team, Kristen, maybe you can jump in here a little bit. There is some, we have a lot of, Fisher has a lot of resources. Tony, you mentioned your team. How do some of our members that want to look into these things and maybe adapting their process a little bit and finding an alternate product, how do we work with your team? What are some good ways to get in touch with you guys?
Yes, Jason. So as the team knows, my name is listed actually on the MassBio website as the key contact. So that's always a good place to start. Further supporting the teams, we do have dedicated sales managers and dedicated sales representatives that cover the MassBio Edge and the New England Edge customers. They're a great starting point, and they act as the liaison to facilitate the connections to Tony's team, whether it is with our standard safety specialists or with a clean room specialist or the production solutions team. So while we are a large organization and often can be difficult to navigate, typically starting with the Fisher Scientific team is a great place to go, because in addition to the safety team, as Tony mentioned, there's also chemical considerations. We have chemical specialists as well. And all of those individuals do act as a consultative resource, really to help you find those solutions that are the most meaningful for your business requirements.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, one other question for you here. So the heat map, which is a very cool tool, and I think it's really highlights some of the issues and the work that's been done. But is that really a sort of market-wide sort of heat map where that's what the industry's experiencing, or is that really an indicator of what the work that your team has done and Fisher Scientific is doing to get supplies in those specific areas and really making sure that you're addressing the specific needs of your customers?
So it's a very good question. So it's a little bit of both, right? So I shared, I think, 3 columns of the heat map. There's probably 15 columns that go after that, right? With a lot of analytics, that we put in. We understand the analytics of what the demand is, right? We understand the analytics of what the supply is, right? We do that from a business perspective, so it represents where we're at, but we also work in consultation with all our manufacturing partners to understand what they're experiencing, right? So we can always base ourselves on not only our challenges and opportunities, but how that is related to the overall market. And I can share with you that, in looking at that particular heat map I showed you, while a lot of that information is driven through what we understand as a business, in my consultations with the manufacturers that I work with, that is representative of the market as well. The only difference being is you're seeing more greens on our heat map than what you're seeing on the market trend, right? And that is based on the activity and knowledge that we have.
Awesome. Thank you. We do have a question from the audience here. This is a little bit less PPE focused, perhaps. Maybe Kristen, you can jump in here. But Lisa is having difficulty finding aerosol pipette tips, and I know, pipette tips is another area of the supply chain that's been a bit of a struggle throughout the pandemic. So, do you have any comments? Quick comments about that?
Yeah, so, again, while this session has been focused on PPE, we do see similar, supply chain challenges when it comes to the plastics market, as well as consumables, as well as equipment. But specifically to the plastic type products within our organization, we've actually expanded our manufacturing capabilities within our laboratory products division to enhance the amount that we're producing, specifically, on the particular product you're looking for. That's where our team can come in. So if there's a particular part number that you have in mind, we can also look to alternatives if you're open to alternatives. So very similar to what Tony mentioned, that willingness to try alternate products is really the key to success right now. We can give you the current lead times on a particular product you're using now, but then also look for alternate sources, because as Fisher Scientific, we do have over 2.5 million products in our portfolio and represent thousands of suppliers. So if it's not within products that we manufacture, again, we would go to our supplier partners to look for those options. So if you'd like to reach out to me directly, I can get you in contact with the appropriate individual to help you find those options.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. Final question. This is really something that just popped in my head, Tony. And I know at the beginning, I was heavily involved with the emergency supply hub efforts. And one of the big things that came out of this was all of our PPE, or the majority of the PPE from what we heard, was being sourced overseas, APAC, right? And there's a huge push to bring some of that stuff back to American manufacturers. Have you guys done any, work in sourcing American manufacturers? I know a lot of companies are trying to pivot and start up. Can you just speak quickly about what we're doing in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on there. I mean, and I think that, while it's easy to say, let's move more manufacturing back to the US, I think it's a longer cycle, to actually accomplish that, in order to make sure it actually is at the levels that can support, the business. I can bring 2 up though, which I think is important. We are working with a manufacturer of nitrile exam grade gloves, 510K rated, that is US based. So right now their supply capabilities is small, but we're taking all of it. So I'm sure they'll ramp it up. And also on the N95 solutions that I shared with you, the million N95s that we'll be having fairly shortly, that's a US based solution. And likewise, the 250,000 a month, that's also another US based solution. So there are some very good bright spots, where you can point to US manufacturing to become more broad scale. I think it's going to take a while to get there, but as soon as we identify one, as an organization, we're all over it.
Awesome. Great to hear it. Well, I don't think we have any further questions from the audience today. So I think we can wrap it up. So I just want to say again, thank you, Kristen, Thank you, Tony, for joining us today. And to the Mass Bio audience, thank you guys for hopping on. We hope you found this to be very informative. And thank you guys, and we will talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much.